Humanist Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following our few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the New Orleans Humanist Perspective. My name is Charlotte Clausen, President of the Board for the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, which is the sponsor of this program, and I'll be your host for today's show. If you'd like to know more about NOSHA, please go to our website, www.nosha.info, and you can see more about our upcoming events and activities in our community. First, let me tell you a little bit about our guests today. Lakeisha Harris is the Director of Reproductive Justice and Health at Women with a Vision. She has also been a health educator, community health worker, and alternative insemination coordinator at Chicago Women's Health Center, which is one of the last remaining feminist health centers in the country. As a community healer, Lakeisha's primary focus is on centering the complete health and healthcare access for Black people, specifically queer and trans Black people, who are often shut out of services that are culturally affirming, financially accessible, and whole being centered. She holds a bachelor's degree in Women and Gender Studies from Northeastern Illinois University and master's level credits in political science. In 2011, she was selected as a student laureate at NEIU, Northeastern Illinois, and received numerous awards for her work as a community activist, poet, and one of the founders of Seeds Literary Arts Journal at NEIU. Most recently, she was trained as a street medic with Chicago Action Medical and is a practicing Reiki master teacher. And with her is Amy Irving, and she is the executive director of the New Orleans Abortion Fund and served as the first intake coordinator. She has worked at abortion clinics in New Orleans and Atlanta and was recognized as the Volunteer of the Year by Planned Parenthood of Kentucky in 2006. She earned her Master of Science in Social Work at the University of Louisville, where she researched the impact of parental consent laws for minors with the ACLU of Kentucky Reproductive Freedom Project, and has a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy from Agnes Scott College. After college, she taught English as a second language, is a former union organizer with the United Food and Commercial Workers organizing grocery store workers in Arizona and Indiana. Her passions also include modern art and mid-century modern furniture. So thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
I wanted to start out because our topic today is going to be the new the legislation that is going through that is being considered the new laws for abortion. And I wanted to start with a statistic or piece of information that I think people should know about the abortion laws in our country. According to a March report from Planned Parenthood, Federation of America, and the Guttmacher Institute, legislators in 41 states have filed more than 250 bills this year that would restrict a woman's right to an abortion. And as that jumping off point, I thought you could tell a little bit about your organizations each and to bring us up to speed, and then we'll jump right in.
Yes, so thank you for having me here. as you read, I am Lakeisha Harris. I'm from Women with a Vision. Women with a Vision is a 30-year-old harm reduction organization that centers the lives of African American women in the city. Started in 1989 by a group of social workers and educators to the answer of what was going down with HIV and AIDS in the community at that time. They started out handing out harm reduction material, which includes for drug users. So includes sterile needles, condoms for sex workers, in an effort to reduce the HIV rate amongst African American women at that time. So reproductive justice is about that. It centers the intersections where many Indigenous, African American, just women see their lives at, and the oppression that they feel trying to navigate that life. So, Women with a Vision has reached its 30th year, and this is our 30th year this year. So, so we address the needs of women in the community. If women need harm reduction material and they're drug users, we're not necessarily trying to get them off of drugs. We meet them where they are and provide things that will reduce harm in their lives. Clothes, we have Ending the Epidemic program, which targets community members and educates them about HIV transmission and engage with them. How do they see ending the epidemic in their community? What ways do they think we should take? So we have a research leg of our organization that is community participatory research. We have criminal anti-criminalization division. We have been working with sex workers in the city for just as long as we've been open, and with an effort not to get them to stop doing sex work, because we know that sex work pays the bills, and especially for LGBTQ members of our community. For trans women, it's very hard to get a job, so many of them will do sex work.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, excellent.
So my name is Amy Irvin. I'm the Executive Director of the New Orleans Abortion Fund. We provide financial assistance to people seeking abortion care and have been doing that since 2012, since we began making pledges. We've assisted more than 1,250 people with financial help in seeking abortion. We're filling a gap that the government ought to be doing, but we're here and offering financial help because there are state and federal bans on insurance coverage. And as some of your listeners or viewers might know, there's the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits federal funding for abortion care and directly impacts folks on Medicaid particularly. But we also have a very robust clinic escort program, over 330 community members trained as clinic escorts. We provide that service 4 days a week here in New Orleans with our partner clinic, Women's Healthcare Center. And they've offered or provided over 3,000 volunteer hours since we've been doing that full time. And then lastly, the other sort of big bucket that we have is outreach and advocacy, and certainly during the legislative session, we're engaging our supporters and asking their support and reaching out to legislators. We've been canvassing on Wednesdays at Lafayette Square this session to educate people about the constitutional amendment that would ban abortion and abortion funding, as well as the Louisiana 6-week ban. We've also been going to Baton Rouge and testifying against these bills in committee hearings. So I personally have been testifying against the 6-week abortion ban, and my colleague Stephanie Bengal has been testifying against the constitutional amendment. So we've been emailing and engaging our legislators on social media and in the media, and certainly have been doing what we can to oppose these abortion bills.
Okay, you've mentioned some of the anti-choice legislation that is just currently on the table. I was wondering if you might do a brief, just a little bit about how this bill or any of the bills in the other states impact each other in terms of why that is so critical.
Well, a lot of our bills are kind of directly connected to Mississippi's bills. I feel like if something happens with Mississippi, then, for instance, the 15-week ban is if Mississippi's ban goes into effect, then our ban becomes effective. And I speak about the 15-week ban, and so there's so many restrictions. And I'll start off with talking about House Bill 425, which is the one that I testified against a couple weeks ago. Okay. House Bill 425 is the constitutional amendment, which amends the Constitution to state that Louisiana would neither fund or provide the right to an abortion, and that would should Roe v. Wade be overturned. Okay. And so what Katrina Jackson has done is and what she has stated is that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, she doesn't want activists or lawyers to come back and say, well, Louisiana, can you provide the right to an abortion? She wants to make sure that abortion is not supported or legal in the state of Louisiana.
And Katrina Jackson, viewers might be familiar with her because it's Representative Katrina Jackson of Monroe.
Yes.
And we also know her because she authored and championed the admitting privileges law that passed in 2014 and is now sitting at the Supreme Court level waiting for a decision. But
I see. So that particular bill has made it up the channel, which I think a lot of people understand somewhat of that, but how bills get stopped. But then you're saying that one's sitting in their files, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's sitting there in their docket, and it'll be taken up soon, and a decision possibly will be made in the fall about the admitting privileges bill. But about the constitutional amendment and the 6-week abortion ban, we know that this is a suite of anti-choice bills. There's been 6 anti-choice bills introduced this session alone.
In Louisiana.
Okay.
As per usual.
Yes. Yes, there's
a lot.
Every session there is numerous bills, and what is shocking is that this session is a budget session, and so legislators are limited in the number of non-budgetary bills that they can introduce, and yet we're still fighting 6. So Representative Katrina Jackson has been very formative and influential in the Capitol and on this issue, and
I feel like her agenda is like kind of a 1-2 punch. So the admitting privileges has made its way to challenge Roe v. Wade at the Supreme Court level. And if that challenge is met and the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, she solidifies Louisiana as an anti-abortion state by covering it with the amendment.
And that would mean that despite what might happen, let's say a year later or 5 years later, Louisiana would just somehow be kind of stopped from ever having services again, or that? So
the admitting privileges bill, to remind people, requires physicians to have admitting privileges at local hospitals. Hospitals don't often grant those admitting privileges. There are many reasons for that, mostly because clinics aren't sending patients to hospitals. The complication rate from an abortion is less than 1%, and if there's a complication, most can be dealt with there in the clinic setting, or doctors have transfer agreements to hospitals. So it's no surprise that hospitals haven't granted admitting privileges to physicians working here in Louisiana. And in fact, if that bill is upheld at the Supreme Court level, all or but one clinic would close immediately.
Because they would not have a physician
to provide care. And so to Lakeisha's point, that is one way of closing clinics, but also if Roe v. Wade is overturned, then they're wanting to ensure that there's nothing in the Constitution to ensure abortion or to give the right of abortion or abortion funding. So
even though the Hyde Amendment is supposed to not allow funding anyway. So why do people keep stumbling over the Hyde Amendment? Why are they not just accepting that that's...
Well, why do they pass anti-choice bills every year?
Yeah.
One of the things I said...
think it's just to chip away. I feel like whatever...
Absolutely.
It's kind of just like throwing,
Like throwing the noodles on the wall.
See what sticks.
Yes.
See what sticks,
Okay.
Well, and I think it's not a coincidence, especially this session, that both Representative Katrina Jackson and the author of the 6-week abortion ban, Senator Milkovich of Shreveport, are up for re-election.
Yes.
And
true.
So I think that every year legislators are mindful of the Louisiana Right to Life scorecard, for instance.
Correct,
Or
yes.
how their constituents back home might be viewing their votes and their positions. So while we know that many people support abortion care, 7 in 10 nationally, actually, legislators seem to be making their political careers off these bills.
Right.
And certainly the 6-week abortion ban, which has been in the news, it's passed in both Ohio, Kentucky, Mississippi. Most recently, the governor of Georgia signed a 6-week ban,
Right.
and now we're looking at a 6-week ban here. It's a national strategy to undermine Roe, another attempt to undermine Roe.
Right. And to make sure the pipeline is full of these bills.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, one thing I did want to make sure we hit on early was the impact on women, especially women of color, and how, and of course, women with a vision would probably have a lot of experience with that. How these kinds of bans do that.
Absolutely. So, here we already have a ban on abortion, and so if you're to 18 weeks, I believe, 20 weeks.
Yeah, there's 20-week ban, right?
So if you're to 20 weeks, you have to travel out of the state to access abortion care.
And is that of a person they're wanting to have a child? They get past that point, they have to go out of the state, even if it's a medical reason that something went wrong.
You have to go out of the state.
I see. So no one can help you here.
No,
medically, really.
Well, we know that. So there are lots of reasons why someone might have a late-term abortion,
and I was going to talk about
it.
Okay, good.
But,
go ahead.
But we know that even most hospitals will refer patients to the clinics, and so for even folks who are seeking a late-term abortion, they oftentimes do have to go to the
just
clinic.
people who might have a medical reason that's just a terrible situation in their life, and they face that. Okay.
Yeah, and then also we need to consider that it takes money. So I want to talk about the economics of getting an abortion here. First, African American women make 43 cents on the dollar than white men. So we have an economic crisis amongst African American inequity
right from the start.
Right from the start. When you talk about the minimum wage, most women who have an abortion tend to have children already. So, you're taking away money from food and rental payment. The rent is sky high. There's
car
other
payments or gas.
Everything. And so when you take that into consideration, it's hard to get the money up. It takes time.
Right.
I just had a client who had to go to Chicago to get an abortion, was being abused by her long-term spouse for a number of years, and decided that she didn't want to be connected to this her abuser anymore.
Right.
And so it took her a while to siphon money from him because he was the sole breadwinner.
Right.
And so it took time to get money and raise the funds. By the time she did that and went to the clinic, they told her she was way too late and had to access care somewhere else.
Okay.
According to these guidelines. So if you reduce that time to a 6-week ban,
there's no time at all.
There's no time at all. There's no time at all to fundraise.
And some people may not even realize it at that point.
Exactly.
Physically, you may not know.
You may not know. I mean, you're not. Usually, it's after a missed period. So,
Well, and certainly like a state like ours, where there's not age-appropriate, comprehensive, mandated sex education.
Exactly.
A lot of young people...
Medically accurate
and
sex
medically,
education.
yes. A lot of young people don't even have a real concept of their body or the ways that they might get pregnant or the ways that they might prevent pregnancy.
Right.
And so they might discover that they're pregnant, but much later than the 6-week.
Oh,
and
definitely.
would be
Or people-
unable to access abortion if that's the decision that they wanted to make.
And if they have irregular periods, then they may assume everything's just typical. You know, this is one of those months where nothing's really happening.
Exactly.
So,
You know, there's so many factors and like why this would be such a horrible barrier to accessing care for women. You know, and it takes time.
Well, and you bring up a good point that Louisiana does not help people with sex education. They are not at the forefront of the scientifically accurate sex education, and nor are they at the forefront of saying, let's prevent people facing these. Let's have excellent contraception care available. I know y'all are probably familiar with the study it was in Colorado, I believe, where they actually helped people have all of their, like if it was the birth control pill, they had all of the pills. They weren't having to go to the drugstore and having to deal with the stress of that or missing something or and then the statistics were just amazing that it really helped people having that consistency. And yet we just don't seem to, I guess, figure out that kind of thing really works. It works somewhere, so why can't it work here?
And there's so many myths around contraception, you know, because we don't have the comprehensive sex education.
Right.
So, you know, even having someone to bounce ideas of what you believe and kind of demystifying contraceptive use for you is not really existent.
Right.
And as we know, even there is no form of contraception that is 100%.
Exactly. Yes. we do need to say that.
Even
correct.
if you're on the pill or you're on some sort of contraceptives or perhaps using condoms, but you may not be using it consistently or properly, that there's a chance of getting pregnant. So even people that are trying to
be responsible.
To be responsible or to, be cognizant of not wanting to get pregnant, things happen.
Right.
And we need to allow for those exceptions. I think that what is not being heard at the Capitol are the stories of women who are seeking abortion and all the circumstances and reasons why they might seek an abortion. It isn't just because women are inconvenienced by a pregnancy, but it might be that it's a wanted pregnancy that has, there's a fetal anomaly, it's not a viable pregnancy. It might be because of rape or incest, or a college student who just wants to finish their degree and have a career and then go on to have healthy families at a later time in their lives. We don't even need to, or we should talk about the rate of poverty.
Yes. Right, and
absolutely.
And certainly women facing that, and the women of color facing it even more.
Yes.
Then this is just a heinous way of treating them. Of treating a group of people and saying, well, you've just got to make do.
You just got to make do and get by.
Yeah, and that's not correct. That's not American.
I think I've heard Milkovich say, the last time that we were there for the 15-week testimony, it was asked, like, if what are women supposed to do in situations of poverty or they can't take care of themselves? And he said, it's just up to the mother and father. That was the response, and I was just like, that's really ridiculous. It's very irresponsible
because poverty has such a huge effect on people's ability to even reason their way through things that seem very easy for someone who, is very active, and competent in their own life. But when you're dealing with the stress of poverty,
absolutely,
that's bound to have a terrible effect on their ability to sometimes even just think something through. Yeah. That's what I mean. It's just the basis of that.
Well, and I think too that if you're living in poverty and then you seek out services, government assistance in some way. You're shamed for that as well.
Absolutely.
And so it's a double bind of being shamed because you've chosen abortion or being shamed because you've carried that pregnancy to term and brought another child into the world knowing that you possibly can't provide in the way that you want to for that child, and seeking help and being shamed for that.
Right.
So it really is an attack on women and a shaming of women and their choices
for very basic circumstances that are part of life. I know that one of the statistics and just doing some of the legislative work about the economics of it is how so many women are the minimum wage earner. Like that's the kind of jobs a majority of women in Louisiana have. So minimum wage and trying to already have a child and possibly care for a situation that you can't afford the contraception that would have prevented, to get on your feet that way. It seems very bizarre.
Yeah. And I also want to lift up the fact that if you are in an abusive relationship, sometimes it's detrimental when, so an abuser will control all of your body. So they may not want you to use a condom. They may not want you to use, it may increase violence for you to use contraception.
Exactly.
And so those things are very real. And also, when we're talking about abortion and resources, when you're shamed, sometimes you can be shunned when you're in poverty situations about abortion. So if somebody's shaming and shunning you, you also lose the resource of community.
Right.
So
and that's the end result that no one seems to have any accounting for, and who come up with these bills.
Yes.
We're getting down to the last few minutes, and I knew I wanted to give you all a chance. I know. See, it just goes by so fast. Yes. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about the kinds of activities you have coming up and kind of those plans, the things you're doing.
Sure. So last week, the New Orleans Abortion Fund, Women with a Vision, New Orleans People's Assembly held a protest in the Capitol Rotunda that gained a lot of news coverage and has really galvanized people into wanting to get involved. And so we made a list of demands at that point, which will be read again this Wednesday at an action in New Orleans at One Shell Square. And it's going to feel and be very much like the action that we did at the Capitol, and that will be, asking people to become more involved, to be reaching out to their legislator, to their governor, particularly to oppose the 6-week abortion ban, but to read the demands, which
stop business as usual.
Stop business as usual. It's part 2 of what we began last week at the Capitol, but there are plans to do other actions and to continue to engage in supporters. So we're also, the New Orleans Abortion Fund is also organizing what we're calling Abortion Action Happy Hours, where we'll be inviting folks to write postcards to send to the governor as well, and engaging them further about these bills. But I don't know, I think it's important to mention the demands that we're making.
So some of the demands include increased resources, increasing the minimum wage, funding early childhood education, and also inclusive of abortion access.
Right. Things that would benefit women.
Paid leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Pay equity.
Yes. Which again has been shot down on a few bills, as I understand it. I mean that.
Several of the equal pay bills have been
summarily kind of passed
dismissed.
over.
The Equal Rights Amendment.
The Equal Rights Amendment. We should definitely mention that. That was an excellent effort, and we're at the end of the show. But I'm glad we ended on something that was a positive. I mean, we got some things done. So thank you so much for coming, and please join us again soon.